Hi, it's Dwyer of always1776.com, a free site. Also, wealthspinning.blogspot.com, a free site, as well as gamblersadvisory.com, a free site. Let's talk about the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. But first, and it's very important, YouTube and some other sources, Spotify, have advised me that my crowd for true crime videos tends to be older than the viewers of my sports betting videos. What I want to do here is to encourage those of you who are older, who remember the era, who have firsthand memories, to leave some of those memories in the comment section of this video, which I'm sure is going to strike some as controversial, right? But please, leave your recollections as well as your theories of what happened in the comment section of this video. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Right? Let me also add too that years ago, when my parents were alive and my dad was a social worker, my dad loved Robert F. Kennedy. Right? Years ago, I used to believe the official version of events. I was a young kid. I believed in government narratives. Now understand, the only reason why my thoughts have varied is because of what I've learned and researched since then. Right? I just want people to understand that. My agenda is simply to get at the truth. Right? My agenda is to also investigate American history from a position where I can look at the country, which I love. Again, I run always1776.com from a realistic vantage point, where I can look at the warts as well as the beauty. Now that said, in reference to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the then President of the United States, and then Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy's older brother, Malcolm X, someone I admire, said the chickens have come home to roost. Now, if you are the American intelligence community and you have been compliant in assassinating foreign leaders, including some leaders who were duly elected, such as the Congo's Patrice Lumumba, or in attempting to assassinate foreign leaders such as Fidel Castro, as the Senate Select Committee to study government operations for the United States 94th Congress determined, then it should not come as a complete surprise that some actions might be taken by people who were involved in such activities, such intelligence operations, and their co-conspirators on American soil. Well, what I want people to do is to consider Googling one of the more interesting people in American history. These are the people who often don't appear in high school textbooks or college textbooks. Robert Maheu. Maheu in 1975, and he's a former FBI agent who then went to work for Howard Hughes, became one of Howard Hughes's chief advisors. In 1975, Maheu appeared before the church committee. This is part of public record. What I'm also going to do, since I view this video as more important than my usual crime videos, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to refer to sources that people can check. Robert Maheu's background is summarized online on the Wikipedia entry for Robert Maheu. His last name is spelled Maheu. I refer to Wikipedia. I understand some people question the contents of Wikipedia. Understand once you do a Google search for Robert Maheu, a lot is going to appear. Well, Maheu appeared before Congress, before the church committee, and he talked about how in the summer of 1960, the CIA recruited him to approach a representative of the Chicago mob, Johnny Rosselli, with an offer to help participate in the assassination of Fidel Castro. Maheu, helping the CIA, offered Rosselli $150,000. Rosselli declined to receive payment and instead introduced Maheu to Sam Giancana and Santo Trafficante. Right? It's very important to remember these names. Sam Giancana was one of the heads of the outfit in Chicago. Santos Trafficante was the mob boss in Tampa, Florida. Well, the mob then worked with the CIA in trying to assassinate Fidel Castro, but were unsuccessful. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning Robert Maheu in a video on the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy is because it was Maheu's former employee, 26-year-old Thayne Caesar, who was holding RFK by the elbow, the right elbow, and leading him through the pantry area of the Ambassador Hotel on the night that RFK had just won the Democratic primary for the state of California. Now, people need to understand that Thayne Caesar had just left Robert Maheu's employ. Caesar had just started working the security detail for the firm that was providing security for Robert F. Kennedy the week before the assassination. So, Thayne Caesar, who was supposed to clear out the pantry area of the Ambassador Hotel, didn't do a good job doing so. According to reports, more than 70 people are in the pantry area of the Ambassador Hotel. Now let me pause here, and that's an important pause here. I need to have people understand that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could never be President of the United States. Never. Simply because becoming president would have given him the power to do a proper and thorough investigation into the assassination of his big brother, John F. Kennedy. Right? Understand that couldn't happen. We'll talk about it in another video, which will be part of this series. I'll label this episode 3. There will be an episode 2 that talks about what I believe actually happened during the assassination of John F. Kennedy. But understand, Bobby Kennedy knew that his big brother's brain was missing from the archives. He understood that the brain couldn't be there because the brain wasn't his brother's brain, which had been partially blown out, according to the reports of everyone who saw the president shortly after he was shot in Dallas, Texas. So Robert F. Kennedy here is running for president, and there are a number of people who understand that if Bobby Kennedy becomes president and then starts holding the people accountable who killed his big brother, many Americans would consider that to be a coup d'etat. Several careers would end. We would still be talking about that assassination today, but in a completely different context. So as Thayne Caesar, Robert Maheu's former employee, is leading Bobby Kennedy through the pantry area of the Ambassador Hotel, just understand that many people are afraid of his presidency, potential presidency. Understand Lyndon Johnson, who appointed the Warren Commission, had already announced that he was not going to be seeking re-election. So Thayne Caesar, who did not clear out the pantry, is leading Bobby Kennedy within 6 feet of 24-year-old Sirhan Sirhan, who has been stalking the president. Now, I understand there's a lot of folklore about Sirhan Sirhan. What I want people to consider is the idea that he's not brainwashed, that his actions are deliberate to the point where we can actually point to some witnesses who saw him as he tried to research and figure out where Robert Kennedy would be. So on May the 30th, less than a week before the assassination, in Azusa, California, at the Kennedy campaign headquarters, let's name names. Laverne Botting, a 41-year-old campaign worker, observes a young woman and 2 young men enter the campaign office. Understand that one of the men comes to her desk and claims to be from RFK headquarters in Pasadena, where Sirhan Sirhan lived. He wanted to know if Robert F. Kennedy was going to be visiting that area. Botting told the young man that Robert F. Kennedy would not. In an interview with LAPD, she picked Sirhan out of a photo display as closely resembling the man who spoke with her. She accurately described Sirhan's height, black eyes, and kinky black hair. Now understand, independently of Laverne Botting, you have Ethel Crehan, another volunteer at the office, who called police, again independently, and told police that she was, in her words, fairly certain that Sirhan had come into the office. Two days later, on June the 1st, 1968, Dean Pack, a Santa Ana insurance executive, was hiking with his son in the Santa Ana mountains. He encounters a young man during his hike who's with another man, right? The young man is shooting at cans on the hillside and has a bad attitude, right? What struck Pack was, and these are Pack's words, how unfriendly they were, right? The man who's shooting, according to Pack, was Sirhan Sirhan. And he was with a guy 6 feet tall with sandy-colored hair and a ruddy complexion. Pack reported the incident to the FBI. The FBI were not interested in following up on Pack's story. Now, the Sunday evening, the week of the assassination, at the Ambassador Hotel, Karen Ross sees a young woman wearing a polka dot dress. Right? The woman is medium height. She's somewhat husky with dark blonde hair. And her hairstyle has a puff in it. This woman is very close in description to the woman Sirhan Sirhan was seen with the night of the assassination a few days later. More importantly, Sirhan himself is at the Ambassador Hotel that Sunday evening. Right? He's seen by Mrs. Susan Redding. He's also seen by someone who knows him, Bert Bloom. Sirhan himself, later, after he's arrested, would admit to having been at the hotel on Sunday evening. My point to you is the idea that Sirhan Sirhan is a Manchurian candidate assassin is simply preposterous. Right? This is a guy who, in the days before the assassination, is visiting RFK campaign headquarters and is also practicing his shooting, in addition to being at the Ambassador Hotel days before the assassination. He had to admit that he was at the Ambassador Hotel Sunday evening because someone who knew him saw him at the hotel. He was stalking RFK. The RFK must die entries in his diary, in my opinion, are a pre-planned offense. They're written in the diary deliberately, with the intention of trying to refer to them later, to claim that Sirhan was brainwashed. Understand, too, there are other sightings of Sirhan Sirhan. I'm not going to mention them because they're controversial. Right? There's some question about witness identification there. But you need to understand that the people I've just named in the sightings of Sirhan Sirhan at places like the RFK headquarters and the Santa Ana Mountains, where he's practicing his shooting, right? Just understand those people are certain it was him. Now, what I want to do here, and it'll be a little bit controversial, is I want to give you some statements that Sirhan Sirhan made at his parole hearing in 2010. Because understand, concerning the girl in the polka dot dress. But what I want you to understand is that there are many people from that night, Wednesday, June 5th, at the Ambassador Hotel, who saw him with a woman wearing a polka dot dress. Right? Darnell Johnson, for example, describes Sirhan as being part of a group of 4 men and a girl in a polka dot dress in the pantry. Right? Just understand that just like Sirhan is a bit of a diversion, so too is the girl with the polka dot dress. It's striking that she's wearing the polka dot dress on Sunday evening, days earlier, at the Ambassador Hotel, when she's seen by Karen Ross. Why the polka dot dress? It draws attention. Now, at his parole hearing in 2011, more than 10 years ago, Sirhan said that he went to the hotel and met a woman. They then searched for somewhere to have coffee. Here's his quote. "She was pretty. I thought I wanted to hook up with her. We were trying to find coffee. There was an urn in the back area. I made coffee there." Right? Then someone comes by and says to them, according to Sirhan, "You have to leave here because we need this space." Sirhan claims that the woman in the polka dot dress then leads him to the pantry area. Sirhan claims he was focused on the girl. She was the polka dot girl, and she disappeared. Right, folks? That's inconsistent with the people who saw Sirhan socializing with her and with other men. Right? Keep in mind, Sirhan is seen with other men and this girl. They are a group. Sirhan Sirhan's story, quite frankly, is self-serving and can't be trusted. I don't believe he lost his memory that night. I don't believe he meets the girl in the polka dot dress that night. I don't believe she leads him into the pantry. Rather, the group goes to the pantry. Now, it's very important to realize that Sirhan is carrying a .22 caliber. Why would he have a gun at a political campaign event? That gun has 8 bullets. Now, according to several people who witnessed the shooting, several, including people who tackled Sirhan, as Robert Kennedy, guided by Thayne Caesar, goes within a few feet of Sirhan Sirhan, he then sticks his hand out. He has the gun ready. He sticks his hand out. He gets off 2 shots. Right? Gets off 2 shots at RFK. And then is tackled. Someone actually grabs his hand as it's outreached. He's in front of Robert F. Kennedy. Right? He's in front of him. He gets off 2 shots. According to reports, he never gets, if you believe the most ambitious witness, within 18 inches of Robert F. Kennedy. If you believe other eyewitness testimony, He never gets within 3 feet of Robert F. Kennedy, and I'm talking about his hand with the gun. Understand, Sirhan is about 6 feet away. Then he leans forward. Then he takes out the gun with his hand extended. Right? At best, it's 18 inches away from Robert F. Kennedy. At worst, he's 3 feet away. Now understand what happened. He shoots twice, gets tackled. He keeps shooting. 7 of the bullets hit people. Right? 7 of them. One is supposed to have gone into the ceiling. Right? There's a hole in the ceiling. They couldn't find the bullet. But all of the bullets fired from Sirhan's gun are accounted for. Now, by chance, a Polish journalist was recording audio at the time of the shooting. In 1968, they didn't have the tools to fully dissect this audio. By 2005, they did. And an audio engineer, Philip von Prague, dissected the audio and found that there are 13 shots on the audio. How is that possible when Sirhan's gun only had 8 bullets? Now here is where this gets to be interesting. Right? Let me just point out that evidence of additional bullets in 1968 surfaced almost immediately. If a 9th bullet was fired, you have a conspiracy, because that bullet couldn't have come from Sirhan Sirhan. You either have a conspiracy, let me back up. You either have a conspiracy or you have friendly fire. Right? There's a shooting. Other people with guns who want to prevent the shooting could have taken out their guns and also fired. Now on June the 5th, the day of the shooting, right? RFK dies the next day. On June the 5th, AP publishes a photo showing 2 police officers pointing at something in the center frame of the swinging doors that led to the pantry. The caption read, "Bullet found near Kennedy shooting scene." Let me repeat that. The caption read, "Bullet found near Kennedy shooting scene." Nothing became of it. The official version of the facts is that Sirhan Sirhan was the only person firing in the pantry that night. Right? This is before the audio showed that there are 5 more shots that were fired. So in 1975, the author of Helter Skelter, the prosecutor in the Charles Manson case, Vincent Bugliosi, who was working with Paul Schrade, who was standing right next to Robert F. Kennedy when Kennedy got shot, was trying to get a thorough investigation into the RFK assassination. And he was able to track down the 2 officers who were in the June 5th, 1968 Associated Press photo. Let's give the names. Sergeant Charles Wright and Sergeant Robert Brazzi. Now, folks, These aren't just cops, these are sergeants. Now understand, both Wright and Rozzi are certain that they observed not just a bullet hole on the pantry door, right, the central panel, but they also observed the bullet in it. The door was shot, and the door had the bullet in it, right? Bugliosi, a member of the California bar, an esteemed lawyer, again, the prosecutor in the Charles Manson case. Bugliosi filed a declaration under penalty of perjury with the courts. Let me read part of that declaration. Sergeant Rozzi had told me, and he told me unequivocally, that it was a bullet in the hole. And when I told him that Sergeant Rozzi had informed me that he was pretty sure that the bullet was removed from the hole, Sergeant Wright replied, here's a direct quote, "There is no pretty sure about it. It definitely was removed from the hole, but I do not know who did it." Let's go one step further. Believe it or not, these two cops in the AP photo who are looking at the center panel for the door, the center frame for the pantry door, are not the only people who saw the bullet in the hole. Right? Understand that the maitre d' at the Ambassador Hotel, Angelo Di Piero, signed an affidavit after the shooting stating that he had seen, here's the quote, "a small caliber bullet lodged about a quarter into the center divider of the two swinging doors." He then went on to point out that he was quite familiar with guns since he had been in the infantry for 3.5 years. Folks, multiple people saw the bullet in the pantry door, the center frame. You have a photo of cops looking at the hole. You have cops telling members of the state bar that they saw the bullet in the center frame and that it was inexplicably removed from that center frame. Right, so, I need to have people just think about that for a moment. All of Sirhan Sirhan's bullets are accounted for. How are there extra sounds of shots being made in that pantry? And how is there a bullet in the center frame of the swinging door? So, believe it or not, there was further investigation. One would have assumed that the further investigation would have clarified things. In 1971, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office decided to do a reinvestigation of the bullet evidence. Would it shock you to learn that in their investigation, while the lead crime scene investigator argued that Sirhan Sirhan was the only shooter, would it shock you that in that 71 investigation, there were experts who reached the conclusion that the bullets from the victims and from Kennedy had markings from different guns and different manufacturers. In fact, an internal police document concluded that, let me quote from it, Kennedy and Weasel, one of Sirhan's victims, bullets not fired from same gun. Let me repeat that. Kennedy and Weasel, bullets not fired from same gun. It further goes on to say Kennedy bullet not fired from Sirhan's revolver. So understand what happens next. In 1975, a Los Angeles judge impanels 7 forensic experts to re-examine the 3 bullets that hit Kennedy and Sirhan's gun. They concluded, and these are the bullets that hit Kennedy, that some of the bullets fired could not be matched to Sirhan's gun. Folks, simply put, the forensics here don't add up. Right? The bullets in Kennedy don't match Sirhan's gun. So let's go one step further. There was an autopsy done in 1968 on Bobby Kennedy's body. Famed medical examiner Thomas Noguchi himself performed the autopsy. He found powder burns on RFK's jacket and in his hair. Folks, these are contact shots. Right? Kennedy is shot from up close. Not from 12 inches away, not from 18 inches away, not from 3 feet away. Also, think about the eyewitness testimony. Kennedy is hit 3 times. Witnesses see Sirhan from distance, right? Let's say 18 inches to 3 feet. Fired 2 shots before his hand is grabbed and he's tackled. He continues firing. It's the people on top of him and around him who get shot. Right? His arm has been moved out of the way. So after 2 shots, Sirhan's arm is moved out of the way. Kennedy is hit 3 times. Now understand, what Noguchi finds is that the fatal bullet that hit RFK in the head, and RFK is in front of Sirhan Sirhan, was fired from behind RFK at very close range. Right? So let's just say you have to ask the question, who was behind Kennedy and who had a gun in the pantry that we know of? This brings us back to Thayne Caesar, right? The former employee of FBI agent and CIA Fidel Castro assassination attempt facilitator, Howard Hughes employee, Robert Maheu. Now, if you're going to consider the sufficiency, if I could even use that word, of the LAPD investigation, I want you to consider that Caesar admits to pulling his gun out. Right? Shots are fired, he pulls out his gun. He not only has a gun, he pulls it out. How close is he to Kennedy? When Kennedy hits the floor, he's holding Caesar's tie. Look carefully at the photos of Kennedy on the floor of the Ambassador Hotel. You're going to notice a clip-on tie next to him. That's Thayne Caesar's, right? Caesar, of course, was the guy who led Kennedy into the pantry. He was the guy who was supposed to make sure the pantry was safe. Would it shock you to learn that LAPD does not know which gun Caesar had with him in the pantry that night? That LAPD never tested Caesar's gun to see if it had been fired? Caesar claims he didn't fire it. Caesar's 26 years old at the time. Claims he didn't fire it. Right? Just to understand, we don't know because there's no gunpowder residue test that was done on Caesar. There was no test done on Caesar's gun. Caesar claimed that he wasn't carrying a .22, but then would later admit that he had a .22 in the past. Caesar has been, or was, he's no longer with us, inconsistent in his statements to police. Just understand that we know that at least 2 people were armed in the pantry. One was Sirhan Sirhan. The other one was Thayne Caesar. Kennedy is shot from the back at close range. The person who was in back of Kennedy at close range was Thayne Caesar. Right now, let me just say, everything in this video should be viewed as my opinion. I'm not making statements of fact here. Right? But in my opinion, the top suspect, as odd as this sounds, shouldn't have been Sirhan Sirhan. It should have been Thayne Caesar. Right? We know Caesar had links to someone, Robert Maheu, who worked with the CIA and who was involved in helping facilitate past assassination attempts on government leaders. Right? At least one. Right? We know that Maheu was so deep in the intelligence community that the CIA approached him about getting the mob involved in trying to assassinate Fidel Castro. And we know that the CIA authorized him to offer $150,000, big money, more than the price of a home, in the early 1960s. Why wasn't Thayne Caesar properly investigated? Let me point out, and I erroneously called Robert F. Kennedy the father, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., earlier in this video. I apologize for that. But understand that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. believes that Thayne Caesar killed his father. He said so. He said so the day Thayne Caesar died. That's his theory of what happened. Now, Robert F. Kennedy can't go, Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can't take the extra step. Right? He wants to accuse, and has, Thayne Caesar of killing his father. The question is, who was behind Thayne Caesar? That's the million-dollar question. Right? Was Thayne Caesar, who was on the job for just a few days, planted in that position to participate in an assassination by Robert Maheu or others in that social circle? Let's talk about something else that's odd. You're Sirhan Sirhan. The autopsy comes out. Kennedy's shot from the back. Right? The gun is supposed to have been within 3 inches of him. Right? Kennedy has powder burns on him, for crying out loud. It couldn't have come from Sirhan's gun. what would the centerpiece of your defense be? Wouldn't it be that you didn't fire the fatal shot that killed Robert F. Kennedy? Isn't that what you would argue? Wouldn't the autopsy be front and center? Wouldn't you take advantage of Thomas Noguchi's high reputation as a coroner? Wouldn't you take advantage of the fact that you're firing your gun from the front, and there are many witnesses, including people who got shot, who then tackled you after you fired 2 shots? Wouldn't your defense be a parade of those people saying, after 2 shots, his hand was knocked away. I was one of the people who grabbed his hand. It was pointed in a different direction. When we were on top of him, he kept firing. That's how I got shot. Wouldn't that be your defense? The autopsy, the logistics of what happened? Incredibly, Sirhan Sirhan doesn't use the autopsy. It's as if he himself wanted to hide what really happened after the fact. Why wouldn't he focus on the autopsy? How could he not focus on the autopsy? How could he not focus on the number of bullets? You're a juror. Could you imagine the police officers that Bugliosi spoke with? Show